Good evening and welcome back to the Weekend Primetime. I'm Ayman Mohideen along with Elise Jordan, Antonia Hilton, and Catherine Rampal. We begin this hour with President Trump escalating his attacks off of the Venezuelan coast. Today, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posted a new video on X of a strike on a vessel he claims was affiliated with a designated terrorist organization and operating in the U.S. South Command area of responsibility. Hegseth claimed 3 male narco-terrorists were killed in the strike and no U.S. forces were harmed. Now, this comes as Senator Lindsey Graham announced earlier on X that he spoke with Trump about going after countries who support drug trafficking against the U.S. Graham added, those who continue to be involved in narco-terrorism against the United States will pay a heavy price. But not every GOP senator is towing that line. A bipartisan group in the Senate is planning to force a vote on legislation that would bar the United States from engaging in hostilities inside Venezuela without explicit authorization from Congress. Here's what Republican Senator Rand Paul, one of the senators leading this bipartisan push, said earlier on Meet the Press.
Do you believe that these strikes against these suspected drug boats are legal?
No, they go against all of our tradition. You know, when you kill someone, you should know if you're not at war, not in a declared war, you really need to know someone's name at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all of these people have been blown up without us knowing their name, without any evidence of a crime.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He also serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's great to have you on the show. There's a lot to unpack right now with what is happening around Venezuela. I want to get your thoughts on it. A lot of people believe this administration is agitating for regime change, the president authorizing operations inside of Venezuela through the CIA. There's no legal basis for what is happening now off the coast. If they're attacking narco-terrorists, they're also releasing them back to countries like Colombia and Ecuador. Just give me your read of the situation and whether or not there is an actual effort to try to curb Donald Trump's authority while the government is shut down.
Well, it's good to be with all of you. Look, Senator Rand Paul is spot on. He's exactly right here. There's no legal basis for President Trump to be taking these actions. These are extrajudicial killings. We just heard from the president of Colombia that one of the strikes in late September killed a fisherman, an innocent fisherman. So this is a lawless president at home and also overseas. The answer to your question is we will be having a vote, not this coming week, probably the next week, on a war powers resolution saying that the president cannot essentially go to war and try to take out the Maduro regime without authorization from the Congress. And Senator Paul is part of that, as are some Democratic senators. I strongly support this effort. I would hope Republicans would vote to uphold congressional authorization and war powers, but so far they've been a rubber stamp for Donald Trump.
Senator, one of the other things that Rand Paul said in that clip we just played was, so all of these people have been blown up without any of us knowing their name. Would you back a statutory 30-day mandatory ID disclosure requirement after each strike?
Absolutely, because right now we have, Secretary Hegseth coming out and reporting, sometimes just on social media, that we struck these narco-terrorists without providing the public with any evidence. And as the statement from the Colombian president indicated, it apparently is not true. I mean, they don't have the evidence to back this up. They need to present whatever they have. Yes.
Senator, will any legislation include a war powers resolution? Will it include language specifically barring the use of American troops in Venezuela?
Well, I would certainly support legislation barring American troops in Venezuela. If the war powers resolution were to pass, that would trigger all sorts of other reporting requirements. I would certainly support putting that forward. Some of us are talking about it right now, and I do hope that you'd get support large numbers of Republicans to vote to say no American boots on the ground in Venezuela. As you indicated earlier on the show, Trump, he blurted out the fact that he'd signed this secret, not so secret, authorization to go after Maduro. So we know what their goals are. And there's no justification for trying to take out the Venezuelan government without congressional authorization.
And has there been any change with Congress being briefed? Because I know there was supposed to be some briefing about this kinetic activity in the Caribbean, but the briefing was canceled. Has there been any additional disclosure from the Trump administration about what are the rules of engagement and civilian casualty assessments, so to speak?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, no. Certainly the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has not received that briefing. I don't believe the Senate or House Intelligence Committees have received that briefing. And it just goes to underscore your point and the point that we're making, which is that this is an administration that's just going around killing people, literally blowing people out of the water, without any accountability or any kind of transparency. And that is a recipe for continued lawlessness. You know, what is it's no longer surprising, unfortunately, because we've been seeing this since the beginning of this year. But Republicans have done absolutely nothing, with a very few exceptions, like Rand Paul. On the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, we haven't even had a hearing on the question of the war powers and Venezuela.
Senator, I want to turn now to the Middle East. Just days ago, Americans were celebrating a ceasefire. We heard a lot of talk from world leaders about their hope for a lasting peace. And now the headlines, the reports coming out of Israel and Gaza, it appears the ceasefire may be falling apart, that Israel is blocking aid to the people of Gaza who so desperately need it. Hamas alleging that at least 24 people have been killed. What are we to make of this, and what role is the United States supposed to play now in ensuring that this ceasefire, this lasting peace, is possible again?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's very fragile. You had Donald Trump there in Egypt with the big sign behind him saying peace. But we're a long way from sustainable peace. And if we're going to have any chance of succeeding in the longer run, the United States is going to have to remain involved to keep all the parties' feet to the fire to make sure that the agreement is complied with. And of course, we're still in the very early stages of this. We haven't gotten to the second stage of the agreement, and that in many ways gets even harder. But, you know, I remember when, you know, George Bush was on that aircraft carrier with the sign "Mission Accomplished" behind him during the Iraq War. This is an example of what's happening now on the ground. This is an example of the fact that you got to stick with this. You can't sort of pop the champagne bottles before you really have sustainable peace. And the situation in Gaza, as you know today, is still a place of total wreckage, devastation, and death. And so we've got a long, long way to go.
I want to get your thoughts on this exchange that the president had with Fox Senator about disarming Hamas. Take a listen to it, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side.
Do you believe they really will disarm?
Well, they promised they would. They said they would. If we have to, we'll disarm
the
them.
U.S.?
Well, whether it's me or the U.S. or it's, you know, a proxy, could be Israel, with our backing, we won't have boots on the ground. There's no reason to.
What do you make of that exchange, Senator? I mean, he says the U.S. may disarm Hamas without having any troops. Do you think he has an understanding of what is happening on the ground and whether or not the U.S. can actually do what he says it's going to do?
Eamon, I don't think the president has ever really had a very good idea of what's happening on the ground in Gaza or what it will require for his sustained involvement if we're going to make sure the ceasefire holds. And of course, the next step is where the president's going to be really needing to put pressure on the parties, especially on the Netanyahu government, when we're talking about establishing Palestinian governance and having that bridge between Palestinian governance in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. We have a long, long long way to go here, and we will be finding out whether or not the president and his team were actually serious about the 20-point document, or whether they, in the end of the day, were just looking for that first moment. Look, I'm glad we have a ceasefire. I'm glad the hostages, the living hostages, have been returned. All of that is good, but we will be condemned to a very dark future if the president doesn't really get involved on a sustained basis here in his team.
Senator, I have one quick question I want to sneak in about Russia, Ukraine. Trump recently mentioned selling Tomahawks to Ukraine and then walked it back. Is that something that is seriously on the table, and is that something that he can actually do without Congress?
Well, the president, in my view, has been played by Vladimir Putin from day one. I mean, he brought Zelensky into the Oval Office and dressed down the Ukrainians and essentially gave Vladimir Putin a pass. And then, of course, they had that summit meeting in Alaska, and Putin left that meeting and escalated his attacks against Ukraine. And so the president has failed in every one of the goals that he has set so far. Let's see what happens in this upcoming meeting that's supposed to take place in Hungary. But if past his prologue, Donald Trump will be played once again. And our European allies, you know, they have their poker faces, but everything I hear is that they are extremely and understandably nervous about the lack of leadership here and the terrible messages that are being sent to Vladimir Putin, that he can act with impunity.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, that was awesome.